On the one hand, we went to Fox News where Lindsey Graham is like, we got to hit Iran and hit Iran hard. On the other side, we go to MSNBC interviewing a general who is like, we have to hit Iran and hit it hard, which in my opinion is immoral and will escalate conflict, pull us into World War III. There is no upside to this whatsoever. I'm saying it. All right, let's get started. U.S. has approved the plan to strike Iranian targets in Syria and Iraq, officials say. Let's take a look.
And Secretary concluding a very lengthy news conference talking about it being a dangerous moment in the Middle East. He said it had been difficult days for the Department of Defense since Sunday's attack, which killed 3 service personnel in Jordan. Then there was that lengthy apology about that controversy about his hospital visit, being treated for prostate cancer, which of course the president was not told about. He apologized to the American president, to his team and the public. He gave a long explanation, but he said it was an explanation, not an excuse. We're listening to all of that. Nick Beek is in Jerusalem for us. Nick, let's return to the many comments he made on the potential US retaliatory action. Obviously minimal details, but what we've learnt is that the attacks over a number of days, there'll be a series of attacks, they'll be inside Iraq and Syria, and crucially not inside Iranian territory itself.
Yeah, Matthew, I thought it was really interesting listening to the US's top defense official there outlining how the White House sees Iran as stirring things up in the Middle East. We've already heard from one of his colleagues how this part of the world...
It's kind of funny because like this kind of back and forth has happened, not to the same severity, not to the same intensity for a while. Like the only reason why the media is paying more attention to it is because right now, tensions are really high due to Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza. But Iranian-backed proxies and militia groups have been operating in the region almost in perpetuity. They've certainly been operating in Syria. They've certainly been operating in Iraq, especially with a lot more prominence and influence in Iraq as well. And this is like this is not new. The fact that there's like a back and forth scuffles occurring with like minor, I would say oftentimes minor and maybe sometimes some serious casualties, often on the side of the Iranian backed proxies. But it's a real tit for tat. Now, of course, the situation is a little bit different because tensions have been elevated greatly. America's involvement in the region has escalated. Israel's actions are causing everyone to pay more attention to what's going on, right? And by the way, those yes, as this chatter correctly pointed out, a lot of those Iranian-backed militias did a phenomenal job fighting against ISIS. Okay, so that's also something to remember. Like the major victims, not the victims, the major villains of like Shia militia forces or whoever the fuck Iran is oftentimes offering like logistical and structural support to are going to be the Salafists. Okay, it's going to be like the Al-Nusra Front or Al-Qaeda or other like Wahhabi and Salafist movements in the region. It's not like people that America also recognizes as like the bad guys. One famous example is obviously like in the aftermath of 9/11, Iran was sharing Iran was sharing Taliban targets with the United States of America in Afghanistan and Al-Qaeda targets too, if I'm not mistaken. So like, it's not as though these guys are not collaborating at all and like are mortal enemies or anything. So in this circumstance, usually there is way more collaboration than you think, by the way. Trump did this as well. They'll tell ahead of time to the other country that they are going to be bombing certain positions, and then those positions will be emptied out. It will still be harmful to the operations, but it's usually more of a collaborative bombing campaign. It's weird, but that is usually how it works. So I think America probably, I don't know exactly, but I assume they like cut a deal. I assume they cut a deal with Iran maybe, and maybe Iran didn't want to cut the deal. But Why would they want strikes in Iran? No. None of this is in Iran. This is not a... Okay, one thing to consider here, okay? Iran is not... As far as I understand, this bombing campaign is not going to target Iran. It's simply going to target Syria and Iraq, okay? That's usually how this works. They don't just like strike at Iran directly. They strike at the proxies in Syria and they strike at the proxies in Iraq. The people that suffer are going to be the Syrian people, the Iraqi people, depending on where they're striking. But that's usually how this goes. However, that's not enough for the Republicans, as Ben Shapiro, Lindsey Graham, and many others are currently salivating at the prospect of striking Iran directly. That would be a major escalation, which would lead to major retaliation from the Iranian forces directly. The IRGC would most likely start operating with great severity and most likely damage infrastructure that America and the rest of the globe relies on, specifically on the energy side of things. They would most likely immediately start launching missiles that are not as easy to apprehend or defend against on like oil refineries and the like. The campaign will reportedly target Iranian individuals and facilities in Iraq and Syria, as well as proxy forces, says Elant News. I think the aim here is to potentially kill Iranian-backed Iraqi militias members as well as their facilities. The reason they're saying it will be across multiple weeks is because they could wait until the IRGC forces let their guard down and re-enter Iraq and Syria and hit them. Iran is not seizing Iran, not have militia groups. USA just causing problem in the Middle East. USA needs to get their head out of their ass and leave Arab region. Isn't this literally what happened before Trump won in 2016 when Obama bombed Syria? Well, Trump did a similar thing. I believe the positions that Trump bombed in Syria were also depopulated beforehand. It's more so about, in a lot of instances, these bombing campaigns are more collaborative than you would think. And it's about like crippling the infrastructure so that it's harder for them to push back and harder for them to actually attack next time around. And it's more of like an optical conversation. It's for optics. Like they want to show to the American public, like, you don't fuck with America, right? Like Americans think like we bombed the out of them. We did a great job. And then, you know, they have something to show for it. It's a continuation of that same tit for tat.
Faces a danger it hasn't seen for some 50 years. And Lloyd Austin there was making clear that he believed Iran was responsible for this through funding and supporting various groups across this region. Chiefly, some of the groups that have been operating within Syria and Iraq. And of course, he said that it didn't really matter how much Iran knew about that specific attack at the weekend in which 3 American service personnel were killed. He said the fact that Iran are giving weapons and giving backing to these groups means that Iran is responsible, and that's why Iranian targets will be looked at in the coming hours and days at a time of America's choosing, he was saying. But yes, you're right, there will be no strikes on Iranian soil. I think that was always seen as highly unlikely. The White House saying they don't want a wider conflict, they don't want to exacerbate things, but they do have to send a message. And of course, that sending a message extends to a few different things in the Middle East at the moment, notably the Houthi rebels who have been firing from within Yemen out towards the Red Sea. They say they've been hitting ships which are linked to Israel, the US, the UK, and they've been doing this in solidarity with the people of Gaza. And they say they'll continue to hit shipping until the fighting stops and Israeli forces withdraw. Clearly, there's no sign of that happening at the moment. So there are concerns that with more military activity in the Middle East about
with that logic, he must agree that America is responsible for the idea of bombing Gaza, right? Yeah, but you don't understand. They're the good guys and not scary. Okay, whereas, you know, Israel, good guys because they are allies and they are the American proxy, and therefore their genocide good. Okay, their genocide good, their war crime good. The other guys, on the other hand, and their proxies, whether it's defensive or offensive posturing, doesn't matter. What their goals don't matter. What their goals are don't matter. Those are the bad guys. Okay? When you are the biggest power player on the planet, it doesn't matter. Okay? You're the playground bully. You're the playground bully. You go in with a gun in most instances and scare the shit out of everybody. Sometimes you use the gun. And if anybody turns around and retaliates and say, hey, man, fuck you. Not even like slaps you or anything. Just says, fuck you. You go, oh, sorry. I have to shoot you in the face point blank. How dare you? How dare you say fuck you to me? It is the worst thing you've ever done in your entire life. Here it is. It's the last thing you will ever do. Spin cycle full on now. Scoop, State Department reviewing options for possible recognition of Palestinian state. Yeah, okay, dude. Sure. American foreign policy summarized by Benny Boy. Israelis like to build, Arabs like to bomb crap, and live in open sewage. This is not a difficult issue. Hashtag settlements rock. That's it. Anyway.
Escalation, but certainly America is setting out how it will respond after those deadly attacks at the weekend, but they say they do it in a calculated manner, at the same time sending a message to Iran that this sort of activity from their proxies will not be tolerated. Matthew.
Nick Peake there in Jerusalem. Thanks very much for the perspective where you are. Let's go back to Washington to our State Department correspondent, Tom Bateman, who was listening to all of that. And Tom, what was your assessment?
Well, let's talk about Iran first of all, because, you know, what is new today is that our colleagues at CBS News reporting that the approval has been given for strikes over a series of days, and crucial.
What I mean by collaborative is like, this probably is not collaborative. Here's what my assumption is, okay? Wee woo, speculation alert. The United States of America went to Iranian proxies or went to like the Iranian spokespeople and whatnot and told them, hey, you got to give us a dub here, okay? We have to hit some shit. And then Iran probably was like, if you hit our shit, we will fight back, okay? We will have our red lines and we will enforce those red lines. If you go above those red lines, we will fucking fight back. So then America was like, all right, well, here's what we're going to fight against. These are the positions that we're going to bomb. The IRGC pulls out. Maybe like some of the militia pulls out too from those positions. You blow up a bunch of places. You blow up a bunch of places that are going to be mostly empty or maybe have like some militia in it. Okay, what the fuck is going on? Hold up one moment. And you know, that way, win-win. America looks good. America gets a little bit of a dub.
Crucially on Iranian personnel and facilities, but not inside Iran itself. Now, I think there's two things behind this. The fact that this information is now coming out, because what we heard from Lloyd Austin is they always say they're not going to sort of telegraph their military action. They're not going to speculate before it happens on exactly where may be targeted. That's the very sort of public from the podium line. But this information is now coming out obviously from elsewhere in the administration, because I think what they want to do is to show to the Iran hawks here in Washington that they are going to respond decisively. It is coming, but they're kind of keeping things in a holding pattern, because people will be asking the question, well, why haven't there been any military strikes already since these 3 soldiers were killed at the weekend? So I think there's one thing to say about the targeting, and that is it's very notable that this does not mention Iran itself. That's what some Iran hawks here want to see, but it does talk about Iranian personnel and facilities in Iraq and Syria. Now, that is still would be a very, very considerable action. There are Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, Iranian personnel in parts of Iraq and Syria. So the targeting of them by the US would be significant. That is supposed to meaningfully deter further strikes against US personnel. But, you know, the fact is the reported approval here doesn't appear to be against Iran itself. They're trying not to draw in Tehran into a wider confrontation, direct action.
Mehmet Wall shows us, instead of targeting foreign nations you've meddled with for decades and instead, I don't know, target your healthcare and shit education, yeah, good luck. Yeah, this is at the heart of my argument for decades at this point. I'm always saying this exact same thing. How about we do a war on like actually things that genuinely, legitimately harm Americans? Okay, how about we do that? Anyway, we can't though.
Between the US and the Iranians, and I think it's important here that they've also mentioned the weather, and I think they talk about cloud cover. I think there is a suggestion this perhaps hasn't happened so far because they haven't got the weather to guarantee the targeting. That's a kind of sidebar mention towards those more hawkish members of Congress that I mentioned. They're perhaps suggesting this is why it hasn't happened yet.
Really briefly, Tom, I mentioned there a really lengthy apology for that hospital stay, that cancer diagnosis that he'd had, but he'd kept it from his department, the public and the president. He went a great length to go through the detail of all of that. This, I think, the first news conference he's actually had since all of that controversy blew up.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time he's been at the Pentagon publicly since all of this. This has been this has put huge pressure on Joe Biden during, the biggest military conflagration in the Middle East, in many, many years that he's been, this crisis that he's been trying to deal with. He's had his own defense secretary, literally taking part in calls about operational activity from his hospital bed.
Do they intentionally mispronounce words? Yes, bro. They're British. Okay. Controversy. Yeah, it's great. Lloyd Austin is supposed to be the big guy. Okay. Lloyd Austin is supposed to be the wheeler and dealer in this situation too, like more so than even Anthony Blinken. So the fact that he's out here dealing with cancer and is like mostly in the hospital bed kind of puts things into a really weird situation.
On an issue of transparency, of accountability, because the senior level of the administration didn't know about the fact he was hospitalized at the start. So we had this very, very lengthy apology, a very, very lengthy explanation, as he put it, as to why he hadn't told the president at the start, and he said he was very sorry for that. It's been a very difficult episode, both for the White House and for the Pentagon during this very serious.
Yeah, here's what I was talking about, by the way. Here's the horniness that you have from the likes of Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham and others look at the situation and go, it's not hard enough. We have to kill Iranians and hit them hard and hit them directly, which in my opinion is one, immoral, two, really stupid, and will escalate conflict, pull us into World War III, okay? I don't know. It's just, there is no upside to this whatsoever.
Reaction, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator, good to see you. Let me begin tonight with this. And I did, by the way, love your comments that they'll have blood on their hands, what's happening in the hearing today. We just had Josh Hawley on about, okay, Joe Biden said he's going to respond. There's been nearly 200 attacks.
Yeah, he's going to respond, except not hard enough. This actually is a perfectly analogous situation to what I always say. Pull yourself out of like pull yourself away from the actual story that we're covering for a brief moment. Let's take a deep breath and let's look at the situation that we have in front of us. Okay? Joe Biden behaving in an incredibly reactionary manner is never going to get the proper recognition from the right, because it doesn't matter. They will always defeat you. They're the right. They're the right wing. They're the real reactionaries. No matter how far right you go as a Democrat, you will always lose to the real right wing. You cannot out-patriot them. You cannot out-racist them. You cannot out-compete them on immigration. And the Democratic Party in this last quarter, for some weird reason, maybe because they just genuinely want to lose, I don't know, has decided, oh yeah, no, what we should be doing is hit the most incredibly reactionary strategies that we possibly could, lending credence to the psychopathic nonsense that the Republicans push for on a daily basis, and completely lose to them. We're losing the arguments across the board. There is no counter messaging against immigration being perceived as a problem, a national security problem. It's done. We've given up on that front completely. Okay? There is no counter messaging against like potentially de-escalating conflict. We've completely lost ground on that front too. Okay? It's just terrible. This is why I say it doesn't matter what I do or what I say or what you do or what you say. You will never be able to change the results of an election if the Democratic Party itself is doing everything it can to lose. Okay? John Fetterman waved the Israeli flag from the roof of roof at anti-Israeli protesters showed up at his house in Braddock, and the red pilling of Fetterman continues. Yeah, I saw this. This is like so weird. It's such a weird thing that he's doing. It's just so odd. he has become more pro-Israel than pro-Pennsylvania. Most historians estimate the U.S. to be a right-wing authoritarian dictatorship by 2040. Get the fuck out of here. Come to Germany is the better Turkey. Yeah, no. Germany is also awful, especially when it comes to Israel. Like, is it the stroke? I don't know.
Against American service members in Iraq and Syria. This day was inevitable because Joe didn't lift a finger. With over 175 attacks, he didn't do a thing except take out an empty warehouse. So he's emboldened Iran the way I see it. What's your take?
Germany is also going full tilt fash. What are you talking about? AfD and its rise to prominence has been, pretty devastating. Every European country is going full fash, okay? Direct descendants of fascists are no longer afraid. They are no longer afraid to push fascist opinions publicly. You got Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. You have the AfD in Germany. You have Marine Le Pen in France. These are all of the people. Yeah, Italy is another one. Italy's perfectly represented to this too. Italy currently is run by a fascist, like an open, out and about fascist. Something that I have brought forward time and time again. A party that was openly Nazi 20 years ago is now the third biggest in Sweden. That's another one. And it all happened because of the capitulation that supposedly center-left parties made towards fascist reactionary politics as they simultaneously allowed all of the social safety nets to be crippled, okay? And instead of recognizing that this was actually diminishing the quality of life of the public, many people saw as their social safety nets were withering away and their quality of life was actually getting worse, they also saw a bunch of people that don't look like them entering the country. So they hyper-focused on that and they went, oh, it must be because we now have like more Muslims here, okay? It's a great way. If you want to privatize every sector that was previously nationalized or previously socialized, the greatest thing you can do is slowly but surely move towards undermining the public sector and defund it year over year over year. You can't do it at once. You have to do it over the course of like many decades. It's the frog boiling in the pan analogy, and before you know it, you're boiled. You're done. You're dead. And they do that, and while they're pulling on that one front with the inevitable interest of genuinely privatizing all of those sectors, okay, with the influx of cheap labor coming from refugee status, migrants, and just immigrants in general, the natural-born citizens of said nations become more and more reactionary because they associate cheap immigrant labor with the real problem. The real problem is not cheap immigrant labor, okay? The real problem is the government's personally withering away all of those social institutions that you took for granted year over year as they kept saying, yeah, no, it's the migrants that are at fault here. Anyway.
Well, number one, you're dead right. Why didn't this happen on Trump's watch? Iran was afraid of Trump. He killed the head of their Revolutionary Guard, Soleimani. Biden has yet to hit Iran directly. The Iranians could care less how many Houthis you kill. They could care less how many Iraqi militia you killed. The only way—
That's insane. We have to strike Iran directly is an insane statement that you are making. This should be, I don't know, you should be, I don't know how to describe it. This is not a thing that you should be able to say with no pushback whatsoever. But here's where we're at now.
The way they will change your behavior and stop killing Americans and attacking our troops and trying to bomb ships in the Red Sea is for Joe Biden to hit their oil infrastructure and start killing their soldiers inside of Iran. I'm not asking to invade Iran, but I am calling on President Biden tonight. Go to the source of the problem. If you don't hit the Iranian oil infrastructure and hit them in the wallet and make them fear you, they're going to keep killing our soldiers. To the 3 families whose loved one lost their life, it breaks my heart this was all preventable. So, Mr. President, hit Iran and hit them now and hit them hard to protect Americans in harm's way.
I don't know if he has it in him.
Yeah, dude, that will definitely make the situation better. You know, it'll definitely make the situation for Americans better. Just like American civilians and certainly American military in the region. Great idea, man. Thank you. He's not asking to start a war, but starting a war would be so sick, is what he's basically saying. Anyway, I'm going to move on from this. Here, what is this?
Joining us now is Admiral James DeVitas, the NBC News chief international analyst.
This is like, I like that we're hitting both sides of the political spectrum here. On the one hand, we went to Fox News, where Lindsey Graham is like, we got to hit Iran and hit Iran hard. On the other side, we go to MSNBC, and you have the wife of Alan Greenspan at MSNBC interviewing a general who is like, we have to hit Iran and hit it hard. This is how you manufacture consent. This is how you arrive at this bipartisan consensus that is always reactionary, that is always psychotic, that will always backfire. Okay? But guess what, dude? Guess what? We'll make a lot more weapons. Okay? Do you want any social safety nets? F you. Do you want weapons? Well, we're going to make more weapons. Okay? Whether you like it or not. Okay? Love when we got like psychopathic generals that are on MSNBC going, we have to hit Iran and hit Iran hard. And it's like usually a dude that is directly working with the federal government on defense contracts after his 40-year military career as being like the most bloodthirsty general. It's like, yeah, that's right. This is here we have on MSNBC tonight, Mr. Spider Rapist. Here it is. This is General Douglas Spider Rapist McDouglas. And it's like he also now works for, it literally, it's always some shit like that. It's like General Douglas Spider Rapist McDouglas here joining us now to talk about the level-headed response to the Iranian acts of violence.
Former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. Well, Admiral, you've seen the drama coming from the Pentagon today. We should first point out that the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, he said that he was clearly limping. He said he's still recovering. He's having physical therapy, but he was very open about the ongoing investigation and the fact that basically he messed up.
Yeah, Lloyd Austin, whom I've known for decades, did what good leaders do and what men and women of integrity do. When they make a mistake, they admit it, they own it, they improve, they go forward, and any further action would be up to the president. And I think Lloyd Austin did exactly the right thing in coming forward now. He made a mistake earlier, but he's handled it as well as you possibly can at this point. I wish him well in his recovery. He's a fine military officer, and I think continues to serve the nation.
I think all of us wish him well.
Okay, get to the blood. Get to the blood.
Place of their choosing, and he pointed out that, as you know better than anyone, as the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, that will depend on a lot of other factors, how people are moving around, reducing collateral damage, civilian deaths, as well as weather and other conditions. But this has also permitted people to move, to get out, to evacuate some of these militias. So are they taking too long to retaliate?
These are military judgments that are being rendered minute by minute inside.
Dude, every time the person that is like the interviewer, doesn't matter if we're talking about MSNBC, doesn't matter if we're talking about CNN, doesn't matter if we're talking about Fox News, is literally asking, why are we not like skull fucking the Iranians? Okay. Hello, Supreme Commander of NATO Allied Forces, sir. When will we start skull-fucking the Iranian soldiers, okay? Why have we not canoed every Iranian child's skull? When will blood be spilled, sir? It's literally the most insane thing. American foreign policy is hold and blood feast. Republican from Iowa, 118 years old. Please, God, let us nuke Iran. Nothing else matters. I'll do anything, please. I just want to see burning flesh one last time before I die. Respectable bipartisan. Okay? It's just, it is true. Beanie Tuesday nailed it 100%. Brother, you are literally describing the gay airplane meme. Yeah. It's true, though. It actually is true. And where are all the people now that were like, Biden greatly de-escalated the drone wars, as a matter of fact? Well, I'm so glad he did, so we could just like catch up at the last quarter. You know what I mean? Like Atlas 2 just caught up at the top of the hour and gifted 10 people 10 gifted subs, so they no longer have to see the ads at the top of the hour. You know what I mean? It's just how it is. It's just how it works. Yeah, this was a great meme at the time and still bangs. Anyway, here's the 3-minute ad break now, ladies and gentlemen. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or for free with the Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, where you get 1 free Prime subscription a month. Use it on your favorite broadcaster. Hopefully that's me. Here's the 3-minute ad break now, brother. We must run. We must rain blood upon their heads, everyone. This is my foreign policy. Midterm elections are coming up. Keep an eye out on these rising stars, the 2018 election candidates of note. Weasel Snrat, Republican from New York, principled lawyer. Main principle is to only defend rapists. Stuart Paul, Republican from Ohio, libertarian, but also wants to use taxpayer money to find and kill his ex-wife. Jillian Drillint, Democrat from California, founder of a startup that sends underprivileged youth to fight in the IDF. Oh, that's such a good one. Numbers Fuckstein, Democrat from Maryland, just wants to fuck around with tax credits and shit to see what happens. Dylan Sled, Democrat from Pennsylvania, unemployed college dropout, heard about UBI on a podcast and went, oh, what? Sick. Free college, free healthcare, free schmurda, vastly more qualified than 99% of Congress. Scum shit, Republican from North Carolina, Nazi. Norm Respectable, Republican from Montana, also a Nazi. Dresden Norris, independent from Washington, spends 5 hours a day on Twitter, vows to have the rest of Congress executed if elected, encyclopedic knowledge of foreign policy, but doesn't know what a filibuster is. Dorian Salazar O'Malley, Democrat from Michigan, community organizer, highly unusual candidate, exhibit qualities of a member of the fabled white working class, but isn't white. 538.com rates him most likely to end up mysteriously dead a week before election. Holden Bloodfeast, Republican from Iowa. We've already covered that a million times over. 119 years old. Please, God, let us just nuke. Let us nuke Iran. Iran, nothing else matters. I'll do anything, please. I just want to see burning flesh one last time before I die. Respectable bipartisan. Sex Tricker, independent from Florida. Oh my God, is that his real name? Holy shit, elect him. Ha ha ha. What the fuck is going on? Hillary, Democrat. Who cares? Oh, come on, not again. Only lost the election because her controller was broken. Third time is the charm. These are all really cringe. Sorry, this is some Reddit socialist shit. This is what is known as a joke. And this is what is known as... What? What are you talking about? Being hawkish on all Middle Eastern states is the epic-based socialist position. Haven't you heard? Yeah, those guys we joke about. I don't know if you know that. Like, the update to this would literally be, like... I mean, these are all candidates that are running, but the update to this would be like, you know, xylitol Magnus, okay? If we were doing like BreadTube and like political commentators, it would be like xylitol Magnus, okay? Had a sex scandal 5 years ago, okay? Had a sex scandal 5 years ago. Has questionable ethics on pedophilia and loves to debate it anyway. Okay, went through a libertarian phase and might still be in that libertarian phase. Last but not least, will always take the position of American foreign policy, will suspiciously always align himself or themselves or herself with the American foreign policy. You need to debate a fascist? It is needed for discourse? No, thank you. Okay. That is extremely specific, and yet it describes so many people. I know. That's why I don't actually fucking mention a real name, and I just made up a name that... Genuine question, why is it always your position that the U.S. should just take it on the chin and move on? I understand that the full-blown war should not be started or nothing for a couple casualties, but at some point the U.S. military has to retaliate. Genuine response to your genuine question. Why the fuck is the United States of America there to begin with? Why do they have to be there? Why must they also always have to retaliate? You have to take it on the chin if you're there. You shouldn't be there to begin with, but if you are there, you have to take it on the fucking chin. Why? Because you are the superpower. That's it. Democrat, Arizona. Yeah. Like, these guys are not attacking us inside of United States boundaries or United States borders. These guys are attacking our soldiers that are weirdly and suspiciously planted all across the Middle East. But because that is like such a normal position for many Americans that we take for granted, that it literally, no one ever asked like, wait a minute, why the fuck are there soldiers in like Jordan? Why the fuck are there soldiers in Iran, or not Iran, sorry, Iraq and Syria? Why are there so many U.S. military bases? Like, why are they on the oil fields? It's almost exactly like Israel. They keep sticking their nose in shit until they get some pushback and oh, how dare they must retaliate. I don't know what this map is. I suspect is this like all the bases that the United States has in the region? Is that what you are showing me? I can't wait for like one of these bases to not be correct so that like every NATO head on Twitter could be like, look at this dumbass, dude. There's no base there. It's probably dated. Wow. Out of the 85 military bases that you're showing on this map, one of them actually moved recently. Haha, therefore I have owned you. The major point that you were trying to make is that, you know, why the fuck are there so many goddamn bases in this region? This one, I know personally, literally has nukes in it. Why is Iran surrounding the American bases? That's what I'm saying. It's like, Iran, how about you chill out, you know? There's only 84 bases there, dipshit. You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, exactly. You mean like this video?
Save it.
The alt-right playbook. It's so funny. Innuendo Studio still makes these videos about like the alt-right. But nowadays, I feel like a lot of the bill fits mostly like the alt-libs, I guess, that behave in identical manners to the alt-right and defend, I guess, like a lot of the positions of like American foreign policy that most parts of the alt-right also agree with the exception of like the Nazis that deviate away from the rest of the alt-right that hate Israel because they're Jewish. You know? It's so cool that now just every American has, just like in the immediate aftermath of like 9/11, Americans have been able to basically fucking hold hands together and decide like how hard we want to kill Arabs. And that's the major distinction. The map I linked is from a 2012 article. You will get corrected. Watch out. I'm so sorry. I mean, it's fine. I already made fun of it. He's got good content on seeing through deceptive rhetoric. No, I know. It's just like people that used to troll on 4chan but just found out about Nordic healthcare and social democracy and only support white trans people but will melt POC. Yeah, it's like a very weird, it's a very weird, oddly specific group of like new Hitlers, I think. It's just like the new wave of fascism with liberal aesthetics is awesome. And it's kind of funny because like even the alt-right, because neoliberalism has created this like liberal monoculture, even the dumbass right-wingers are also using like bodies and spaces ass language. You know what I mean? So like everyone is basically coming to this middle where people are like, actually, Sweaty, I'm a white identitarian and you are attacking point of privilege. Your reactionary sentiment towards my white skin, which is an inalienable characteristic of mine, is actually quite concerning. And it's like, dude, what are you saying right now? You're just like fucking a woke white supremacist. Like, what is happening? And then liberals do a similar thing as well. It's so funny. They call Garrett Wilders a conservative leftist now. I don't even know what that fucking means at this point. Literally, no one has said that ever. My friend, this is good. I'm glad that you said that because that means that you don't go on Reddit. Okay? That means you do not go on Reddit. And that's really cool of you. I don't do it. Don't go on Reddit. Of course I don't. Yep, there you go. So there, you've never actually heard it. Stay away from r/LSF live stream fails. Stay away from r/neoliberal because let me tell you, you're going to get a lot of that. Okay. Don't go on r/world news. Don't go on r/Europe. Stay away from Reddit in general. It doesn't help that there are super famous YouTube streamers convincing impressionable young would-be socialists and former groypers that it's actually very based on socialists and anti-imperialists to want to melt China or whatever. No, that stuff doesn't matter. No, that shit's for the birds. That is like incredibly specific and like incredibly marginal, just annoying to our little circle of the internet type situation. No, the broader politics does not come from YouTubers, okay? Like, there's no real influence there, okay? The broader politics comes from the underlying material conditions and the multi-billion-dollar operation that is built on top of that is consistently manufacturing consent. That's precisely why we're currently watching a General McFuckstick over here, former Supreme Admiral Commander of NATO forces, say the identical things that Lindsey Graham is saying, with like some slight deviation, right? Maybe he's not going to say we have to immediately melt Iran, we have to nuke Iran in the same way that Lindsey Graham was saying earlier, but like the energy is there.
U.S. Central Command, by the way, Lloyd Austin's command when he was a 4-star, so he knows this region extremely well. What's important here is that this is going to be a campaign, not a one-off, not a simple one-time precision-guided strike against a particular target. It's going to be an ongoing series of attacks, I think, against not only the Houthi Red Sea maritime threat that you were showing earlier, but also against these militias in Iraq and Syria. This will go on, I think, for a number of weeks and probably accelerate in terms of the hammer blows we are landing. At that point, Iran, hopefully, will take control of these militias and pull them back. Otherwise, Andrea, I think the United States will have to at least consider strikes against Iran.
See, this is the reasoned, more tempered approach, which inevitably also is like, well, the United States will have no option but to nuke Iran. It's so funny that this is literally the MSNBC line. The Fox News line, as I showed you earlier, is nuke Iran now. The MSNBC line, led by a dude who is like getting, I assume, money from the defense industry now, because every single one of these guys are. I don't know what his background specifically is, but he was the supreme commander of NATO or whatever. If he's not getting, if he's not lining his pockets with a shit ton of money from different interest groups and specifically the defense industry, then he's a fucking fool. Okay, the difference is literally the rhetoric of offense versus the rhetoric of defense. No, the Republicans are also saying we have to be offensive in a defensive posture. He's also coming to that same conclusion. He's just saying we got to wait a week to do it. That's it. He very much is. Yep. Don't trust the defense industry's Ukraine pundits. And they did this. They did this for a year. Okay? They did this for a year. That's why it's not the dumbass YouTubers that like upset you when you hear people go like, I'm an anarcho-NATOist or something. It's not those guys, okay? It's not those guys that have like cultivated a space that is like incredibly horny for American foreign policy to be almost identically aligned with the reactionary Republican right, okay? Those guys are marginal. It's just what you see on Twitter. So like, because we have horse blinders, we think like, oh, well, these guys are dominating every conversation. They're so profoundly impactful. No, this is the real impact. It's having former generals and people who were like lobbyists directly for the defense industry go on every night and consistently push these positions over and over and over again, normalize the idea that America must retaliate, America must be violent, okay? That is infinitely more impactful on the American collective consciousness and how jingoistic we are and how we become like little Western chauvinists anytime like America's feelings are hurt. It comes from this, okay? I was talking about this with a buddy of mine who's, let's say his immediate relative used to be a CNN producer, and like the die-in-the-wool, like regular, straight down ballot, strong D Democratic voter. Producer for CNN, no longer a producer. And one of the things that like he readily admits, and I think like a lot of people, as a matter of fact, that work in this field in mainstream media readily admit, is how unimaginably disingenuous the Israeli sources that they put on television are. Okay? They know. Every single person at CNN knows that when you put a fucking Israeli official on television, they're going to lie. Okay? And they do. They lie nonstop. We've shown it time and time again. They lie so much that they've limited their bookings now. But for the first couple of months, they booked them nonstop. Anytime they're blowing up a hospital, you got to have Jonathan Konkunkrius, or whatever the fuck that fat-headed dildo, whatever his last name is, go on and be like, these are terror babies. You do not understand. Jake Tapper, these are babies of terror. That's why we have to do this. Like, literally, they were these babies were throwing terror rocks. You know? Yeah, here it is. Our Nazi correspondent, like, he did that. Jonathan Cocksuckrius fucking got him. They did that every day. They did that every day. Do you think that that is not important? Do you think that like that doesn't have staying power? Your grandparents don't, your liberal grandparents don't think that CNN is lying. They look at Jake Tapper and go, he's a handsome man. He's such a handsome man. He's so honest. I remember how he spoke out against Donald Trump. They have no framework where they think like maybe CNN has a different interest here, okay? They have no way of like looking at this or like reading the New York Times and thinking like, I wonder if the New York Times is biased. And the unfortunate problem is that many people who do recognize that these outlets are biased end up becoming psychopathic right-wingers who think everything is a psyop. Taylor Swift is a psyop. The New York Times is trying to make me gay by making me take a vaccine. It sucks. I feel so lonely all the time because those who are like supposed to be media literate, who try to like exercise a little bit of caution and like see through the lines and read between the lines and recognize that like American State Department is always going to have bipartisan consensus and like our media operations are regularly going to churn out propaganda that is like very, very pro-Israel, even when you don't think that it is pro-Israel, for example, or pro-war in general, even when you don't think that it's pro-war, for example. It just sucks that when you have a more reasonable approach to this kind of thing, many of the other people on the sidelines that actually are like fake news, they're running the fake news line over and over again, are like weirdos. They're psychos. They're just anti-vaxxers and QAnon supporters and shit like that. It sucks. I want to pull them back into like reality, and I can't do that. And I can't even pull the liberals away from the understanding that like the media does regularly have a serious bias when it comes to churning out pro-State Department propaganda. And I think this is a perfect demonstration of that. That's why I showed you the right-wing moment here, and that's why I showed you what the MSNBC line is on, striking Israel.
On directly. Let's hope we don't get there.
Well, there are a number of people in Congress, as you know, in both parties calling for exactly that. There have been more than 160 attacks against U.S. and international forces, and nothing seems to have deterred these Iran-backed militias.
Did I say striking Israel? Sorry, that's crazy. Striking Iran, of course.
Absolutely correct, and I think we're at the final exit before the tunnel, so to speak. We need to be communicating that directly to Iran. I think we are doing so. We need a very robust series of strikes. And by the way, not just against militias, but against Iranian Revolutionary Guards who are outside Iran conducting the training, the organizing, the equipping of these militias, this so-called.
All right, yeah, every day is the same. U.S. shoots down missile posing imminent threat to U.S. aircraft. Not to mention, libs have reflexively latched on to mainstream media more in reaction to the right's rejection of it. I mean, to a certain degree, I think so. Speech is heavily controlled in many different ways with mainstream media. People that are honest or honest speaking generally do not rise to the top. Or, look, the way it works is that there is a neat confine that Like there's a box of ideas that are permissible, that are appropriate, that you can speak on. Okay? If you are anti-capitalist in any meaningful way, or if you're anti-American State Department in any meaningful way, which is just another way of saying anti-capitalist because American State Department operates at the behest of capital, then you have to toe a very serious line. You have to toe a very specific line. And if you deviate away from that, you'll get clapped. On the right, that line is on the right, that line is straight up like openly being a Nazi. If you are openly a white supremacist Nazi and you say that you're a white supremacist Nazi, you know, you pull a fucking Kanye West, then you've crossed the boundary. Okay, but everything before that, like Tucker Carlson, you have not crossed that boundary. Tucker Carlson is a fucking straight up white nationalist, right? But he never says he's a straight up white nationalist. He simply asks, what's going on? These are all coincidences, right? And when he does that kind of rhetoric, it doesn't matter. But like if you're marginally center left on some of these issues that puts you at odds with the interests of capital, you're done. You're out. You're not getting elevated. You are not going to get elevated. So there is no like extreme principles on both sides that are equivalent to one another that you can actually point to. There's no moral equivalence there anyway, right? But there is nothing. I mean, there's nothing that even comes near. Like Mehdi Hasan is a liberal in many respects, right? He's a liberal in many respects. And yet he still got punished. He still got clapped. Who is doing the elevating? What do you mean? What do you mean who's doing the elevating? I never comprehend, though, how do they benefit from lying at the behest of the government if they don't work for the government? Wouldn't the truth be more controversial, more profit? How are the financial interests tied to agitprop? Very easy, okay? There are a shit ton of pharmaceutical ads on CNN. There are a shit ton of healthcare ads on CNN. So if you are pro-Medicare for all, openly a socialist, openly claiming that we have to eviscerate the pharmaceutical industry's profit motive, we have to destroy the healthcare industry, the for-profit healthcare industry, you're not going to get elevated because you can't say that in between Concerta commercials, okay? You can't say that in between Blue Cross Blue Shield commercials. That's like nutty. Why do you think I don't have a shit ton of sponsorships? Well, one, because I don't personally take them on when they come through. But the other reason is because sponsors hear what I have to say. I don't think those things are related, Hasan. Wait, what? I mean, here, this is a timeless
censoring organization.
Here, Noam Chomsky writes, manufacturing consent. Andrew Marr asked him a question. You talk about censorship. You talk about censorship in organizations like, and he very quickly retaliates and says, I'm not talking about censorship at all. I'm talking about elevation. And he describes how this operates. This is a perfect answer to your question.
Tell me how that works. You're not suggesting that proprietors phone one another up, or that many journalists get their copies spiked, as we say?
It's actually Orwell, you may recall, has an essay called Literary Censorship in England, which was supposed to be the introduction to Animal Farm, except that it never appeared, in which he points out, look, I'm writing about a totalitarian society, but in free democratic England, it's not all that different. And then he says unpopular ideas can be silenced without any force. And then he gives a two-sentence response, which is not very profound, but captures it. He says two reasons. First, the press is owned by wealthy men who have every interest in not having certain things appear. But second, the whole educational system, from the beginning on through, just gets you to understand that there are certain things you just don't say. Well, spelling these things out, that's perfectly correct. I mean, it's the first sentence is what we expand on.
This is what I don't get, because it suggests that, I mean, I'm a journalist, people like me are self-censoring.
No, not self-censoring. There's a filtering system that starts in kindergarten and goes all the way through. And doesn't work 100%, but it's pretty effective. It selects for obedience and subordination. And especially, I think that's...
So stroppy people won't make it to positions of influence?
Behavior problems, or if you read applications to a graduate school, you see that people will tell you he's not, doesn't get along too well.
It's like it's like the drill tweet, you know? Remember on like October 8th or 9th or 10th or something, like Kick 100% went to every big streamer. There is a reason they didn't go to you, even though regardless you would have never taken a deal. Yeah. Listen. Well, I mean, I guess by way of XUC, they kind of tried to prod that out, and I was literally like, fuck no. But yeah, because they can't afford me, dog. That's why. By the way, as I've said before, for the record, like being consistent and being principled in this situation doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't. You just keep getting punished. If anything, people will turn around and go, yeah, dude, there's no way he's actually this consistent. We must find a hypocrisy here. So, you know, he's just, it usually doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, this is the tweet that I'm thinking of. The Middle East is complicated because it's bad to support smothering orphans in hellfire, but I also really want to graduate Harvard. Okay, that's it. Same principle works in that in the media as well. It's like, yeah, I like internally, I think what Israel's doing is like kind of fucked up, but also simultaneously, I kind of want to, you know, make more money and get elevated to a position of like executive producer inevitably, and that's it.
With his colleagues, you know how to interpret those things.
I'm just interested in this because I was brought up, like a lot of people, probably post the Watergate film and so on, to believe that journalism was a crusading craft and that there were a lot of disputatious, stroppy, difficult people in journalism. And I have to say,
I guess what I'm saying is what makes an org like the Reuters or AP objective, but CNN and others not? The former arguably do more original reporting and scoops than the latter. Wait, I never said the AP or Reuters is objective either. No, I don't think the Associated Press is objective. The Associated Press, for example, in this regard, the Associated Press also is not even close to being objective. Okay? Guess what? For example, when the Israeli death squad went into a West Bank hospital in Jenin, okay, the Associated Press literally said the Hamas-backed health ministries hospital. It's the West Bank. It's actually the Palestinian Authority that runs that hospital. Technically. Well, not really, because it's still, I believe it's like the Jenin brigades, but, or I don't know how exactly the hospital structure works in Jenin, but it's certainly not Hamas. Like, that's, the point is, like, it's little things like that, little errors like that here and there that demonstrate biases, right? There's no objectivity there. And yeah, thinking about that, it's like there's a person that I know personally that was fired in 2022 for being outspoken about Israel. If you recall, what was her name? Damn it! Like literally, they fired a journalist specifically for being outspoken about Israel. So Emily Wilder, yes, no, not Katie Halper, Emily Wilder. So my point is, I think actually Katie Halper might have been fired from somewhere too. I don't really remember, but my point is like none of these guys are actually objective. They come close to objectivity. I guess you could ask the question like, what is objective, right? Katie Halper got fired from The Guardian for saying Israel was an apartheid.
I think I know some of them.
Well, I know some of the best and best-known investigative reporters in the
Oh, not from The Guardian, from The Hill.
United States. I won't mention names, but whose attitude toward the media is much more cynical than mine. In fact, they regard the media as a sham, and they know and they consciously talk about how they try to play it like a violin. If they see a little opening, they'll try to squeeze something in that ordinarily wouldn't make it through. And it's perfectly true that I'm sure you're speaking for the majority of journalists who are trained, have it driven into their heads that this is a crusading profession, adversarial, we stand up against power, a very self-serving view. On the other hand, in my opinion, I hate to make a value judgment, but the better journalists, and in fact the ones who are often regarded as the best journalists, have quite a different picture. And I think...
Yeah. And they usually do get the international recognition that they deserve, unless they are still alive, like Seymour Hersh, in which case, during the duration of their lifetime, they will still get ritualistically humiliated and bullied by mainstream media and constantly chastised, regardless of the fact that their contribution to the field is phenomenal. Okay? I guess what I'm wondering is what's in it for CNN to warmonger as opposed to just reporting the news in a naive sense? They can still have access they want without being outwardly opinionated and pro-war, yet they're always pro-war. No, they can't. And they also want to spice it up. And Associated Press is not getting the same level of like advertisements from all of these like Raytheon and the defense industry in the same way that CNN is. It is a direct the interest of the media overall, whether people recognize it or not, whether it's like people deliberately going, I'm going to do this, I'm going to promote this position, whether people recognize it or not, is still going to be aligned with State Department narratives, but also aligned with the corporate oligopoly, because they are getting paid by the corporate oligopoly. Okay? Most people also don't recognize that they're being biased, as Chomsky's mentioning, because like if you're so ingrained in the liberal monoculture, then you don't even sometimes think about it. You just think like, well, what do you mean? This is just the truth. This is just the objective truth. And people that are naysayers against the objective truth are probably naysayers because they have like a secondary a bias here. Like they're Muslim, like Hasan. Maybe they just have a fuck America, I hate America attitude or something, not realizing that I live in the United States of America and obviously would not want it to fall apart. Okay?
Under new threats as the Pentagon prepares to retaliate for the deadly drone strike in Jordan that killed 3 American soldiers. Chief Global Affairs anchor Martha Raddatz is in Jordan. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, George. We are in one of the most remote parts of Jordan. The Syrian border is just behind me. Iraq is off to my left. These are the countries from which the Iranian-backed militants have launched attacks against Americans. This morning, the U.S. finalizing retaliatory strikes for Sunday's drone hit here in Jordan that killed 3 American soldiers and wounded 47 others, the majority of the wounded National Guard soldiers. The deadly strike, one of nearly 170 attacks aimed at Americans in the region by Iranian-backed militants, the latest in the Red Sea. The U.S. conducting self-defense strikes in Yemen on a Houthi drone ground control station and 10 one-way drones. Just hours earlier, the USS Carney shooting down an anti-ship ballistic missile fired by the group, in addition to 3 Iranian drones in less than an hour. U.S. forces also striking down a Houthi surface-to-air missile Wednesday, which officials say presented an imminent threat to U.S. aircraft.
Here's a really cool, really good way to like de-escalate and engage in like actual self-defense that preserves the lives of many of these soldiers. Okay, these brave soldiers, the merchant marines and the like. Get the fuck out of there, and also listen to the demands being made, the very reasonable demands being made by the Ansar Allah government. That's a great way, is on 2 fronts. Okay, on 2 fronts, it's a win-win-win-win-win. You know what I mean? This guy has a different opinion though. He said nuke Yemen.
Operating in the area. This after the USS Gravely intercepted a Houthi missile heading toward the ship, splashing into the sea within only 1 mile of the warship, the closest call yet. Now, all eyes waiting for the response to the tragic attack in Jordan, with the White House for the first time blaming the Iran-backed militant group Islamic Resistance in Iraq, an umbrella group of numerous militias. The Pentagon preparing to unleash a multi-day, multi-target campaign bigger than anything seen this far, in hopes deterrence will prevent more loss of life. President Biden calling Oneida and Sean Sanders, whose 24-year-old daughter Kennedy was killed in the attack.
I know, everybody, I know there's nothing anybody can say or do to ease the pain. I've been there.
Yes, sir, we understand.
The parents overcome with emotion when the president reveals how their daughter will be honored.
We're promoting her posthumously to sergeant.
Oh, wow, that is the best news I've heard today. Thank you so much. You don't know how much that means to us.
Oh, well, I tell you what.
Dude, it's like, it's such a waste. It's such a waste. Like, she didn't have to die. Why the fuck is she dead? You know what I mean? Why is she in fucking Jordan? And now she's just dead. Oh, it's great. Yeah, she's posthumously elevated to the position of sergeant. It just sucks. It sucks so fucking bad.
It means a lot to me. My son spent a year in Iraq until I lost him. And,
she's not being sarcastic, no.
1% of all these kids are the ones that we're going to take care of 99% of us.
Such heartbreaking scenes. President Biden is not expected to hit Iran directly, fearing the conflict in this region will escalate, but it has already spread far beyond the borders of Gaza. George?
Okay, Martha, thanks. Hi, everyone.
What is this? Why do we have to pretend like we care about soldiers who were there to kill innocent civilians? Why is she signed up to kill Middle Eastern farmers? I mean, I don't know if you know this, but like, she signed up not specifically to be like, I love killing Middle Eastern farmers. She signed up like many others did, okay, to get their college paid for, to have like some semblance of upward social mobility. That's what a big chunk of people sign up for. The idea that like the American military doesn't run on incredibly predatory practices that that specifically target like black and brown communities, for example, and offer some semblance of upward social mobility and educational opportunities as a you know. If people say the poverty draft is a lie, right? But what they don't recognize is that, like, if you are middle class and you want some semblance of upward social mobility, like, you have to go to college. And it's incredibly, incredibly expensive, okay? And you have no other real options. Biden's son died in Iraq? No. He didn't die in Iraq, but he did die as, I think, a consequence of, like, the tire smoke that he inhaled. I mean, he died of cancer due to being stationed in a forward operating base where they were burning tires. So, and the tar pits, the burn pits. It's really interesting to think about because it's like Biden couldn't pay for his fucking health care. Like, think about that. Biden couldn't pay for his health care and he had to like, he was going to take out a third mortgage on his house or something. And Barack Obama was like, okay, don't do that. You're the VP. Like, I will pay for it. And yet this man still ran for president against Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders was going for Medicare for all. It blows my mind. The U.S. Army's massive socialist jobs program, but man, it's so fucked up and predatory. My cousin got $60K in debt for 1 year of college and opted into the military to continue with schooling without committing financial suicide. Yeah. He literally said he died in Iraq to the woman. Oh, I didn't hear it. All right, anyway.